Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from, or if you're catching us on replay. This is the Awesome Journey, and I am your host, Kelly Steinicke, along with my co-host in care, Christy Howard. And we are just two girls that connected on Facebook or on LinkedIn 15 years ago, live on opposite sides of the country, have giving hearts, a passion for paying it forward. And I may have prayed to be living louder in my purpose, and now here we sit in front of microphones. And one of our primary goals here is to highlight incredible individuals to share their unique stories and challenges, because let's be honest, we are all united in our personal journeys. And today's incredible individual is Mr. Chris Fields, and we could not be more excited, thrilled, privileged, blessed to have him here. Many of you may recall Chris from the iconic photo from April 19th, 1995, where he was cradling baby Bailey Allman following the Alfred P. Murdaugh bombing. And since then, Chris has served nearly 32 years with the Oklahoma City Fire Department and worked up the ranks, retiring as a major in 2017. And since has dedicated his life to faith, family, and to even more communities, because not only did he serve 32 years with his local community, he is now putting that out nationally through several programs, one of them being Trauma Behind the Badge, having the tough conversations, as well as Lighthouse Health and Wellness, which is an incredible cause that helps those that help us. And it being Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, this couldn't be a more perfect conversation to be having today. And again, we are so blessed to have you with us and want to spend as much time, Chris, sharing his story about his journey through trauma. And that all being said, let me turn it over to my co-host in here, Christy Howard.
Hello. Yes, I am so excited. I'm fortunate that between Kelly and I, we have some awesome, I call them friends, but they have some great stories and I've learned from them, but I honor them. And Chris is one that I completely honor for what he's done, where he's been, and what he continues to do. And for those of you who do not know who Chris is or that picture, go Google it. Learn your history. Anyway, Chris, I was trying to do that very politically correct. And we know I'm not.
Yeah.
But thank you, Chris, for joining us. And so let's just go with your story. So, you know, people see what they saw on the news. However, they didn't know the emotion of what you did and what you've been through and where you went through and what you went through and where you're at.
Right. You know, like I say, it was 28 years ago now was the Oklahoma City bombing. You know, and I get this platform getting to be with y'all and getting to travel and speak because of that day and the photo of me and Bailey. And like I tell people, it's not my entire story. It's part of it. And I use that story to get out there and get the message out to help other first responders. And I guess my main message is when I get done talking is, you know, you don't have to wait until the wheels fall off, you know, to reach out and get the help. But about that day, it was real quick. Well, it was, like I say, 28 years ago. It was a Wednesday. I'll always remember it was a Wednesday. At the fire station, I was stationed about 15 blocks north of the Murrah building. And around 9 o'clock, 9:02, you know, we had the blast. We self-dispatched down there, and we were kind of doing a triage area away from the actual Murrah building. So, you know, we're 10, 15 minutes in. We still haven't seen the building per se. You know, we're a block or so away doing some triage on some people walking wounded. And then the incident command told us to come down to the building. And I tell people every day, man, when I look at that building and standing at the base of it, you know, 9 stories, pancake down on top of each other, a third of the building gone, 30-foot crater, 8 foot deep out in front of the building, 9 o'clock in the morning, take all that together. And if you'd have told me right then, and this doesn't take away from any life that was lost, but if you'd have told me right then only 168 people were going to die in that blast, I would have thought you were absolutely insane, just because of the amount of people that were already at work that day. The real quick, it was pretty much search and rescue for my crew and where we were at for about the first 3 or 4 hours, and after that, probably after about 10:30 or 11, we didn't have contact with any live people the rest of the time. Ours was pretty much recovery mode, working with. By this time, USAR teams had responded and got there, and some of them, and we were using cadaver dogs and live scent dogs, and but before that, about 45 minutes into the incident, is when a police officer he just appeared out of nowhere, and he was hollering for help. Said he had a critical infant. 1995, police officers. I don't know how much they do now. They don't do first aid. I mean, they do, but they don't. You know what I mean? So he was just looking for somebody to help him, and so I just said, "Here, I'll take her," and I took Bailey from him. Same thing, I checked her for any signs of life. Had to get concrete dust out of her throat, and she had open skull fracture. I couldn't find any signs of life. I saw an ambulance across the street, so I walked over there, and exact same thing Sergeant Avery, the police officer, said was, I told them, I said, I have a critical infant. And the story jumps around because I got to put it in perspective, so I'll jump ahead to 11 o'clock that night, back to, so
yeah, understandable.
It'll sound crazy, yeah. But yeah, probably not a good word to use. But oh, by the way, I had no idea this was Men's Mental Health Month until I read y'all's post. So that was kind of cool timing. But I walked over to the paramedic, and I didn't know about the photo until 11:30 that evening when we got back to the station. Through a series of phone calls and from our dispatch office, they had a photo faxed to them from the Associated Press. The dispatcher, I knew him. He said, "Chris, this looks like you in the photo. They want to identify the firefighter." And Chief Mars, Gary Mars, our fire chief, and he said, "Sure, it's okay to identify him if we know who it is." So I didn't even know it was me for sure. I just took the dispatcher's word and said, "Okay, if you think it's me." So I saw it for the first time the next morning, in the newspaper and on the TV of all the coverage and showing, all the headlines around the world. And there was that photo. And I still think about it, man. My first thought when I saw that was, I wonder if the family even knows, because there were still people looking for their loved ones, and not everybody, and I think in that first day, there were only a few victims that were actually removed and identified. So I didn't know, if they'd even, and I just felt that I'm not a mother, I'm a father, but I think a mother would know, and talking to Erin, which is Bailey's mom, when she saw it, she knew that was Bailey. But when I see the photograph, I knew exactly what I was doing, where I was standing. It's right after I told the paramedic that I had a critical infant, and he was getting a blanket so he could lay her on the ground because the ambulance was full. They'd used several cots and backboards. There was nowhere to put her. And I remember him saying, "We're not going to put that baby on the ground." So he was getting a blanket. And I'm just standing there looking at her and thinking, I knew she was close to my son's age. My oldest son, who's 30 now, was 2 at the time. And Bailey had turned a year old the day before, April 18th. Mm-hmm. And so I was just thinking, somebody's world is fixing to be turned, upside down. And like I say, that was so early into the day, and thinking that thought, and not realizing that thought or another first responder or rescuer on the scene was going to maybe have that same thought, that same image, I'm sure was portrayed 100-something times around the building. Mine just happened to be caught by an amateur photographer. But to think that same emotion was going to be, 167 times, more times around through that event. And probably more than that, because a lot of there's over 700 injuries. And probably some of the injuries you didn't think people were going to survive, and a lot did. So that was, that's kind of when went and worked that day and worked the rest of the, the bombing. We go down there in 12-hour shifts and go back to the station for our last 12, or vice versa. You weren't down there 24 hours anymore. They started rotating you in 12-hour shifts. And, like I say, that was the last, after Bailey, we went back in the building, or I went and caught up with my crew. They went into the building. I got Bailey to the ambulance. We rescued one lady. We got her out, Sheila Driver. And it's kind of one of those issues where we were standing on top of her and we didn't know it. We could hear her hollering for help. Finally, we figured out we were standing on her because she said she could feel pressure. So we found out how how she was laying, and we got her out. And the reason it's so significant for us was in that situation, man, there was nothing good, going on that day or for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And as first responders, all we want to do is get there and make a bad situation better. That's what we want to do. That's what we pride ourselves on. So we got Sheila out. She was 6 or 7 months pregnant, 28 years old. Communicated with her, got her out of the ambulance, or got her out of the pit area, and she went to the hospital. And like I said, we got back station. That was kind of what little bit of a high you could have from that day. And then the next day, we saw her listed as a fatality. She'd passed away on the way to the hospital. And so it was kind of that, emotion of, we thought we had done something good. And then she passed away on the way to the hospital with her unborn child. And the bombing was like no other call in the fact that, well, just because of the magnitude of it. And it was something in the first responder world, most of us, when we make a call, whether it be house fire, full arrest, suicide, whatever the call may be, once that call's over, we go back to the station and we get ready for the next call. We don't have any follow-up. Sometimes there's some where we'll call the hospital and get a report, follow up. But most of them, we put them in the ambulance, close the door, and we're on to the next call or back to the station. This, and with good reason, we lived it every day because it was in the media, and rightfully so. But it was just different because of the fact that we had to live it every day. And so that was kind of we had other things before the bombing. We here in Oklahoma, we've got the weather. We have floods, tornadoes, you name it. And then in 1989, I'd only been on 3 years, a little over 3 years. I got hired in 1985, and we lost 3 firefighters in a house fire. And one of them was kind of my mentor, kind of the reason I got on the Oklahoma City Fire Department. And so you're dealing with all this stuff, like I say, and it's 1985, and then it's just things we dealt with them in a different way. We'd go to their funeral, these 3 gentlemen, we'd laugh, we'd cry, we'd tell war stories, we'd use our dark humor. That's just how we got through. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, but there's a better way to process this. And we didn't. The bombing was, man, you talk about your life going into a whirlwind. By the next morning, I've got national media on my front yard. I mean, things are just haywire, and I'm doing interviews left and right because I feel like I'm obligated to. The mind is a crazy thing. Like the fire chief would say, "Hey, Chris, so-and-so wants to do an interview. Do you want to do it? If you don't want to do it, I'll be the bad guy and tell them no." And I'm thinking, I don't want to be a bad, so it's just kind of your mind. I'm going, well, I felt obligated to do them, and being singled out was horrible. Chief John Hanson was our public information officer at the time. May he rest in peace. He was a great guy. He kind of helped me focus and just say, it's not about Chris Fields. It's not about Bailey Allman. He said, he said, that photo represents, the firefighter represents every first responder that was on the scene that day. And Bailey represents all the innocence that was lost, no matter the age, whether it be fatalities, injuries, because people's lives were changed forever from the injuries, emotional, physically. I'm still friends with several of the people that were in the building that day who are, thriving, but they still have physical and emotional scars from that day. So, and y'all feel, man, something.
So when did you, Chris, when did you realize that it was time for you to take care of you? You had been taking, as a first responder, that's what you all do. You take care of everybody else. However, from somebody who knows a lot of men, we know mutual people that, going back to it being Men's Mental Awareness Month,
right.
Men were never, even going back to Vietnam War, just get over it, get through it, and don't talk about it.
Right.
However, when that starts piling up and piling up and piling up, and then the icing on the cake explodes, and then you spiral down into that darkness. How long, what do you feel that the bombing was the icing that just started to spiral you down to that place to where you went down and then up and then where you're at now?
No, unfortunately. It
Oh,
was,
okay.
well, no, it's, I was gonna say, it's kind of weird because it was everything, but then it was a trigger 6 or 7 years later from the bombing that I can
Wow.
pinpoint as it. So
Okay.
between the bombing and what I will call the day I know things started to get worse was a lot of, and it was just because of the bombing and the everyday calls and the things we're going through. We lost 2 other firefighters in that time period, one in the line of duty, and one was killed off duty in a car wreck by some meth heads that crossed the center line, hit him head on. That was my first. During all this period, it's a long story. During all this period, I had left the rigs for a while, took a position. I was kind of working in the chief's office, and I was like the assistant PIO. Well, my first call out as the assistant PIO, because our deputy chief that was the normal PIO was out of town, was the traffic accident involving the off-duty firefighter, which was a good friend of mine and my family's. We played a lot of softball, fire department softball together. He was killed with him and his 12-year-old son. So that was kind of my first call out as a PIO. And, and I say being hired in 85, all these guys I worked with that raised me, what I say raised me on the fire department were, got hired in the 60s or the 70s. They were former Marines, and that was just the way they were brought up. It wasn't that they were callous, didn't have empathy or sympathy for people. It was just they knew in this business, you can't go back to the station and sit and dwell on it, or the alarm's going to go off. You're going to another call, and your lack of focus could either cost a patient their life, or it could cost one of your firefighters their lives. And so it was just how you were taught. It was just the nature of the beast. It's how it was. I did a pretty good job I had these many bouts of depression and isolation, and I was pretty good at covering them up and going on because I didn't everybody want to see Chris Field struggle, because I wasn't supposed to struggle in the role we were in, some people say it's the John Wayne, whatever mentality, or you got to be the man. I wanted to take care of my family. I didn't want my family to know I was struggling. You don't want the people that are working underneath you to know you're struggling. You don't want the people that put you in that position to know you're struggling. So it's just kind of, you learn to mask it pretty well. And I was pretty good at it. With all that being said.
Sorry. I was just going to say that has to just get exhausting though, right? For you, like I would think somewhere over, because shoving it down. And I think this is such an important part too, is that it is exhausting, and knowing, what was happening with you internally. I just had to be awful. And how to even process that in your own mind.
Right. And like I said, the term sick and tired of being sick and tired doesn't even do it justice. And not just me, that's everybody's going through it, but it's exhausting. And we always worry about the first responder and their struggles. We forget about the effects it has on the family.
Yeah.
And for my family, it's having a major effect. And it's one of them deals to where my wife can see something's wrong. She doesn't know what to say or do. So when I tell her nothing's wrong, like I don't want to talk about it, she begins to think she's the problem. It's just that lack of communication. And it got to a point to where things weren't, honeymoon anymore, and then one day we were putting a pool in the backyard, and we were going to extend the patio out. So I was helping the guys bust the patio out. A lot of people don't know it rained the night of the Oklahoma City bombing. So we're inside there working, and you got that kind of that wet, cold smell of concrete dust. Well, when I'm out doing this jackhammer to get our patio up, it starts to sprinkle a little bit, just enough to wet and I caught a smell of wet concrete dust, which I know now is a trigger. I didn't know what it was then, but in my mind, I thought, that smells just like the Oklahoma City bombing, or it smells like that day, or the whole experience, and I didn't like freak out or drop to a knee. It was just went to my brain. And man, that's the day I can really pinpoint when things really started to intensify as far as the depression, the isolation, the quick temper, the anger, and it started having a major effect, on. And by this time, I've got 2 sons now. When the bombing happened, I had 1, and when all this really starts to happen, I've now got 2 sons. Things are horrible here at home, mainly 99.9% my fault, and it just spiraled out of control, where it got to the point to where my wife said, "You need to get help, or you need to get out." Well, I'm Chris Fields. You're not going to tell me what to do. I can handle this. I got this under control.
Right.
And so I moved out, and we were separated for 17 months of me denying anything was wrong. It's kind of a funny point, but I tell people I was getting all my marriage counseling and life counseling from other firefighters that were in the same shit world I was in,
Right.
sitting at a strip bar during the day drinking beer.
Right.
That was my go-to, because they were telling me the things I wanted to hear, and I was doing the same for them. So that's just where that was my comfort zone. That's where when I would start to question, gosh, those guys would say, do what you want to do, live your life, and all that. And so, because they want me in their world,
Exactly.
in that world, because it made me feel like these other people that were trying to help me had no clue they were wrong. And everybody that was reaching out to help me were the ones I was pushing away, my family, my friends. And like I say, we were separated 17 months, and that was 17 months of nothing but, me paying all the bills here, running up debt so I keep up this happy lifestyle. I was so good at manipulating the facts and hiding things that not a lot of people in the fire service even knew we were separated. I mean, that's how good I was at masking and covering up. And how did I do that? With Xanax, until that didn't, and then you mix Xanax with a little alcohol, you can really, escape those feelings and helps you get through. And it just came to a point one day to where, and in that, I'm humiliating family and friends. I'm pushing away good friends from years that all they're doing is trying to help, and those are the people I did not want to talk to. And they, my wife, I had extramarital affair was going on. I didn't care who, and I stepped back, and I'm sorry if I'm cussing. I'm not supposed to, but like
No, it's us. It's us.
But like I said, I own my shit. That wasn't jump ahead. I ended up being diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, all the boxes. But I own my shit. That was none of that made me do the things and say the things. One of the hardest things I still struggle with, even though I'm forgiven and life is great. I said things, I get emotional talking about it. I said things to my wife that children should never hear a spouse say about another spouse. Yeah, I'm forgiven, but I can't take them back. There'll just be days. I don't have bad days, but I have some days to where things are going so good, I'll think, God dang, I'm so lucky to be here. And then it'll hit my head that my sons heard me say that to their mother, so it's just, it's still a struggle, but now, and we'll get to it, I know. But now, instead of Xanax or alcohol, not saying I don't enjoy a cold beer every now and then, but instead of turning to that to fight those feelings or to get through that emotional struggle, I don't have to do that anymore. But it came to a point, man, where I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired, and tried to take enough Xanax and alcohol if I didn't wake up the next morning, that the family could focus and move on, and they could be out of their way. And I've learned so much about suicide is not people say, how could they be so? It's not a selfish act. It is. You get in that mindset, you think you're doing everybody a favor, or people that complete suicide, they think they're doing you a favor. And well, fortunately, it didn't work. So I called my wife the next morning, told her I was ready to come home, and she said, "Come on." And of course, I know she had friends, telling her, "Chunk that bum, kick his ass to the curb," and there might be a few today that still resent her for taking me back. I don't know. But
it's the relationship between the two of you. It's
right. And that's what she said.
She
She says, "I just knew that wasn't Chris Fields I was dealing with." I can look into
Exactly.
his eyes. She said it was just empty, blank.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
yeah,
She knew this.
I don't know where I'd be today if she, well, or where I wouldn't be today if she hadn't have said, come
I
on,
mean, the strength in that and the forgiveness and how
yeah,
that had to feel for you, for her to be like, "Come on home." I
yeah.
mean,
This
especially after that night of, trying to be like, "I don't wanna wake up tomorrow."
right,
And
and
then "Come on."
this is from a woman who will tell you that when the heat of it and then the middle of it was going on, she used to pray that God would take away her love for me so she could just be done with me. And
God
like I
bless.
said, for her to have that strength and that grace to forgive me is just it's why I'm here today.
Oh,
And that's
beautiful
why
on
God
that
didn't do it,
forgiveness.
what she
Yeah,
wanted.
and that had to be, I would think for you, the next step that would probably be also extremely difficult would be forgiving yourself.
Yes,
Absolutely.
that's and I still struggle. Like I said, I still struggle to find my own grace to forgive myself. I'm better. I'm good, but there are still days that sometimes I'll just think about it. It'll just pop. Something will trigger it. I don't even have a set thing I can say. I need to avoid that because it triggers me. Just it may be a song. It may be anything. That can trigger that. And
We
so
have to remember that we're human.
yes, that's what, and that's
It's tough to remember that because those triggers are triggers I look at the triggers to remind us that we're human and that we were supposed to make mistakes.
right.
And the the you know Cheryl bringing you back, she's praying to God. Well, God's like, yeah, okay, it's not going to happen,
Right.
and this is what's going to happen
Yeah.
because the love was there, and she saw you for who you were and are. However, that
Yeah.
person left for a while.
Right.
So I wonder, Chris, if it was you left for a while to come back to where you are today. That's the whole thing about the awesome journey. We go through the good, the bad, and the truly flippin' shitty. And
Oh,
sometimes it's such dark, dark times where we're ready to check out. We're ready to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to put the people I love anymore.
right.
And I'm pushing everybody away because I don't want to ask them for help because I don't know how to ask them for help.
Right.
However, when we get through, when we claw through, when we get to where we are, you realize that the path has opened up for you to do better, to become a better person. I mean, that's the way I
Right.
see
Yeah.
the awesome
And
journey.
it's so true. And that's when I get out and speak. That's why I try to tell people, it's just you don't have to wait until the wheels fall off like I did and some of the guys I'm fortunate to speak with. Uh, what was it? I got to look. Hold on, real quick. I got this quote I saw today, and I was gonna. And
Love
it
it.
We
goes
love
for.
quotes.
And here I am on this. I should have just wrote it down so I'd have it right next to me. Uh, it's Brooke Bartlett. She's PhD. She's on LinkedIn. She writes articles for Fire Rescue One. But she says, and it's so true that not everybody exposed to trauma gets PTSD, but you don't have to have PTSD to need clinical support. And
Absolutely.
And
I love that because that's why I tell people want to compare trauma and they want to say, well, I haven't seen what you've seen. So what's traumatic to me may not be to you and vice versa. And that's what I always, people that compare trauma just piss me off. The ones that say, well, wait till you've seen this or wait till you really, who cares? It's all different for everybody. And that's why I try to tell people I speak to, just because you do reach out for help, just to talk to somebody, it doesn't mean that you're going to be diagnosed with anything, that you have to go to treatment. And I will talk about that real quick, my treatment, because I hear some people speak and they get up there and vomit this trauma all over their audience and they just like walk off. Well, thanks, I'm done, without, offering some kind of hope or, just because
right.
you're there and you're able to talk to an audience doesn't mean that you've conquered, the
Right.
trauma and stuff. And for me, it was reaching out and going away to treatment, being diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety. And this was in, early 2000s. And I have to take that back, 2008. Um, but there's
Oh,
so many resources out there today. It's ridiculous. It's just like my son who's 24 now. When he was in college, I assumed he was a partier, and like most college kids, not all, but I would always tell him, I said, there's no reason for you to get a DUI, for me to get a call that I said, there's so many resources out there available, Lyft, Uber, rideshare, all these things. And I compare it to first responders today. There's so many resources that are openly available now for first responders to reach out. And, for me, it was somebody reaching out for help. Number one, a first responder's life cannot be compromised. That's kind of our trauma behind the badge, survive first mentality. It's as brave as the profession that we do. Everybody, that reaching out for help is one of the bravest things you'll do, because you're going against the norm. You're going against what conceived to be the norm. What you're supposed to be doing in that profession. But I was fortunate. I reached out to our fire department chaplain. I went to a facility in Northern California. First responders only. Found out I wasn't a unicorn. I wasn't the only person, that was having these emotions, these feelings, which now I've learned are all perfectly normal, first responder or not, because like you said, Chris, you are human. And so every emotion you feel spiritually, mentally, everything you feel when you're exposed to trauma is perfectly normal. And
amen. And
so I went
I
away
think,
with treatment. Yeah, I
yeah,
was introduced to EMDR treatment, which
yeah,
a lot of people badge psychotherapy. It does well. You tell me to go stand on my head and eat a banana, and if that works, I'm going to do it. I was at that point, and EMDR worked for me. It allowed me to talk about these issues without feeling those same traumatic effects when I used to talk about it. And like I say, it was just, and it wasn't. I don't pump sunshine, say it was an easy journey. It was tough. It was tough.
Sure.
I mean, in your mind, you're still admitting that you couldn't handle it, that you think you failed, but like I say, when you get there around your other first responders and you see that they're all having the same emotions, same feelings, same thoughts. We get compassion fatigue, which they say I've heard people say it's the cost of caring. Well, we run on so many calls, we take on these other people's, trauma of these calls that we go on continuously. Real quick, I always tell people all the calls we make, some are, we make suicides, we make full arrest where we're doing CPR, and we can't bring them back, car wrecks, with, cutting 16-year-old fatalities out of the car wreck when their parents show it, just so many array of things. And it's just up and down. But the simple ones we forget about, which what we call our everyday calls, I guess. You respond to in the morning, 90-year-old gentleman that's passed away in his sleep. You get there, you walk down through their house, you see all their memories on their wall, what a great life, a family. You get in there and they're deceased. You can't do anything. You go back out, you tell the wife, he's gone. We can't do anything. And this 70-something-year-old lady puts her head on your shoulder and starts crying. I said, I woke up with this man every day for 60-something years. What do I do? To me, that is, you can tell it affects me now talking about it. To me, that's as traumatic as, because that's affecting her. Yeah, it wasn't a car wreck, wasn't a sick, but that's her trauma. And they don't, I don't know, you just take that trauma on. That's what they say, compassion fatigue or the cost of caring. And doesn't matter if say it's a 5-year career, 30-year career, whatever, you're going to be exposed to trauma, period. You can't avoid it. If you don't want to be exposed to trauma or as much trauma, you're going to be exposed to trauma in your personal life, whether you're a first responder or not.
Right.
But if you don't want to be exposed to trauma on a daily basis, then don't become a first responder, I would say. And always know that there was another quote, I'm not going to try to look it up, but it basically says the thought of thinking you can be exposed to this kind of trauma every day and not be affected by it is as unrealistic as thinking you can walk through water without getting wet. It's not going to happen. You're going to be affected.
Yeah, that's amen. And so many things, hearing you talk about this that come to mind. And yes, there are so many resources nowadays than there were back when you first were reaching out for help. But don't you think there's still part of that stigma of I
Absolutely.
am a first responder, I'm strong, I'm not supposed to do those things, and I don't want anyone else to see that. Even though they're being talked to openly and hearing more about it, "Hey, if you're struggling with this, reach out to this person." But still somewhere in there, I'm supposed to be the hero of others and forgetting to be the hero for myself.
Right.
So
Well,
his shirt backwards is,
Yes, stigma.
cut- it's cross out the stigma.
The stigma, yeah.
I mean, and that's the whole thing that, and as Kelly said, that, we do have help, but I know because, I'm friends with a lot of first responders and a lot of retired ABC people that we're not supposed to help. Even though we know we're struggling, we can't share what we want to share because either it's confidential or I'm going to be weak and people, I mean, and it's even tough for strong women. I mean, this is not, even the strong women, the first
yeah,
responder women. I mean, I get it's about men this month, but it's the mental health is still a conversation. It's not like it used to be. But
Right.
as much as we keep on saying, let's talk about it, let's talk about it, let's talk about it, I feel like we haven't even opened it up. And you can, read as much we can have, which I want you to share into the two nonprofit, the two
right,
Trauma
trauma
behind the
behind the
badge.
badges
right,
and yeah, the lighthouse. But it's called that we see so much other stuff that's out there. Again, I'm trying to be politically correct, that to me, the mental health of people, of the first responders, our vets, that needs to be the number one. Let's help their mental health over what's out there.
right,
Again, probably going to piss off a few people, but
right.
Yeah, and just
Well,
even
and
to add on to that, it shouldn't even
yeah,
just be a month. I'm like, this should just be an everyday
it should
conversation.
be,
right.
it's every day. It should be every day.
Yeah.
Well, and again, and there's some kind of report out there of what they call white paper. Something says, first responders are exposed to, I don't know how many more times traumatic events than the average person. But, it's just talking about the women real quick in the first responder world, especially the fire service. Here, these women overcame such a male dominated profession, went through all the testing, got the job. So now if they're struggling, there's no way they can act like they can feel
Ooh,
like they can reach out, because
not
I'll
at all.
promise you, and I don't want to dog the entire fire service, but a lot of them are, well, it's a majority of men, and most men are pigs. Let's be honest. So, you let a guy
Oh,
struggle and reach out, but you let a female struggle and reach out. Oh, I knew she couldn't hack it. I knew she couldn't,
yep,
and
yep.
it's just, so how much tougher is it? And I talk about that. How much tougher is it for them in our profession to reach out for help, on top of, and it goes for male and female. I think people forget that first responders are human.
Mhm.
We're not first responders all the time. It's what we do. It's not who we are. It's what I try to tell people with your identity, because get up and go to the fire station and experience that trauma when you come to station after, having a fight with your spouse, or you got a sick kid, or there's financial stuff going on, or, so you got all this that you've got to push aside. And then when you do come home after a bad shift, I think I always told my wife about the funny and the good calls, you know. So if I came home and wouldn't talk about it, maybe she knew, but I didn't want to, if we had stuff going on at home, I didn't want to pile what I was feeling about some calls we made on top of, you know,
Right.
because in the fire service, when you're gone 24 hours, I think they say in a 20-year career, you're gone a third of the time. Well, I'll promise you, the car never breaks down. The kids are never sick. The washer and dryer never breaks until you're at the fire station. So there's always something going on at home, that you take with you to the fire station. And you talked about it. It is the stigma, and the conversations are getting better. They really are. And it's that, it's probably I don't know, you take the guys and girls with newly hired now to 10, 12, 13 years on, 14, they're good about, really, but they are about, reaching out, talking about the issues before they get to where I got.
That's
You
great.
take that 15, 16 to 25-year career or 30, they're all like, screw that. And so it is, but it's funny that, especially in the fire service, if I get hurt at a house fire, or, I come out with my helmet melted and my gear nasty and I broke my leg, you're hailed as hero. While you're off duty, they're setting up food trains to bring food to the house so the wife can take care of the kids and not have to worry about it here. And the same with our occupational cancer, which is, out of control right now. Same thing. And that's the way it should be. But if you mention mental health, it's kind of a little more hands off. You don't see the community of fire service family reaching out as much as they would if you were, because they can't see the wound, they can't see the injury.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's easier to bring a dish, a casserole dish, instead of sitting down and going, let's go dig deep.
Right. Well, a good friend of mine said when he tried to complete suicide and he was unsuccessful, but when he went for treatment, they took him to this facility, and he said, actually what he said, he goes, I wish I would have been shot. And so he said he went to this place, they took his shoelaces, they took, because the doctor came in and said, so why do you want to kill yourself? You want to die? He said, I didn't say that. He said, I wish I'd been shot. That way I could see the injury. Yeah. I could see it heal. I could, and that's the way it is. Everybody, what you think, the injury can't exist unless you can see it. And that's what it is. It's an injury. It's not a disability.
We got lots of good comments, and I've been showing them. But this one, Greg, he was there. He was. Hold on, I will quickly tell you. He was part of the CISD team that responded to the Oklahoma bombing, and so his comment is, there are times when we are caregivers have to look in the eye and tell them not to buy the lie. It's not weakness or failures that need help, which is what you've been sharing.
That's what I say. It's I read it in a book. It's talked about reaching out is not giving up. It's refusing to give up.
Amen.
Absolutely.
It was a quote in a book. It was a quote in a book from a horse, believe it or not, in this book. I read.
Well, Mr. Ed.
But, I just thought.
Yeah, I'm reading on a very small level. But
I love that.
But the talking about the CISM, it was there, it was in place, and we were doing it. And I talk about it when I travel and speak, that because I like to get on leaders now. I can get on chiefs because I don't have to worry. I'm retired, so I can't get fired. I can't get, so I don't care. I tell them, if they, another quote, I use other people's stuff because I'm not smart enough to think of stuff of my own. But another guy used to tell them, if you really care about your people as much as you care about your equipment and your buildings and all that, then you'll give them the tools they need, to take care of themselves when they're seeing things that other people don't see or shouldn't see. And talking about the CISM or CISD we had at the bombing, and I talk about there's a few issues sometimes I still struggle with that, because as a leader, I was a captain at the time, and I've had a few firefighters that were with me at the bombing. I know they've struggled since then, like I did, pretty bad, some of them, few of them. But I remember going to, as a leader, when we'd get off our shift on the pile or where we were working, and we would go to CISM, I would look at the guys and girls and say, hey, we have to go over here and talk to these people. I'm not saying shit, but if y'all want to talk, feel free. Really? I look back on that and think, what kind of message were you sending, as a leader, that, hey, we have to go over here, which we did. It's okay. But then to say, I'm not saying nothing, but if you want to, go right ahead. I mean, I look back at that and think, oh my God,
that's part of the stigma, right? Because I don't need it, so I'm not going to say anything.
Right. Right.
And I'm saying that to a kid with not even a year on the job. Well, you know what he's going to do? He's going to say, well, my captain's not talking about it. I damn sure don't need to be talking about it.
Right. So how did you come about with the trauma behind the badge? And Chris, I mean, we're going to go over the time right now because I love this story. And if you've got the time, I got the time.
I got the time.
I mean, People want to
Yeah.
hang out. We've got a good number hanging out here. So if people want to keep on hearing this,
Okay, cool.
Yes.
you know, it just because your journey goes here and there, but it keeps on going more positive. However, you still keep on reflecting, which is good because it keeps
Right.
on making you human and understanding where you were, the darkness, and to be able to give it forward. So
Right.
share.
Okay.
We're here.
About 2000, I retired in 2017, around 2018 sometime. This guy reaches out to me. I look him up. I see him on the History Channel. He's a former ATF agent that infiltrated the Hells Angels.
Gee.
Got a big old white beard with braided. Anyway, Jay Dobbins, which I'm just telling you, he's a badass with a heart. He's a big old bear.
And he is. And just to mention to everybody, he will be coming on our show.
And I don't know how it came about. Anyway, he reached out to ask me to come speak at his event he was having in the Dirty T in Tucson. And I went. I suppose I think it's the first time I publicly spoke. And I met a guy named Doug Monda, who was he's the founder with his wife of an organization called Survive First, which I'll talk about in a second. But anyway, Trial Behind the Badge, me and Doug just kind of became good friends. And then we do a few speaking things together. And we thought, hey, we need to get together and do some stuff together. He's a suicide survivor, former DEA agent, Cocoa, Florida officer, Blackwater sniper, you name it. Anyway, so there was a group of us, me and Doug Monda and Raul Rivas from the Pulse nightclub shooting, Chris Scallon, Rich Creamer, and we formed this group called Trauma Behind the Badge. And we call it, I think, motivation through tough conversations is what we try to, that's our deal. You can find us at www.traumabehindthebadge.us. We
and
have
we'll include all the links in the comments, y'all, afterwards, so that you can get.
We have a weekly webinar podcast, I don't know what you'll call it, webinar deal every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is not family friendly. Let me repeat, it is not family friendly. It's the conversations you have around the table at the fire station or out in the back lot at the police station or whatever. It's they're tough. We have great guests on there, other first responders. We have doctors, clinicians. We have you name it. We talk about everything from the trauma to sleep to physical fitness to everything. And we are fortunate that in a lot of things we all get to go speak together. Sometimes just like I just got back from I was in LA, in Ontario, California, and then I was in Milwaukee with Raul. They had called and just wanted me and Raul, so we went and spoke to the Ontario Police Department was having a responder wellness week, so we were fortunate to get to speak there, and then went to Milwaukee for a little charity event thing, and it's just evolved into still kind of took on an identity of its own, and it's we have
Goodness usually does that. When you do good, it usually blows up.
It does. It was doing great. And what we do is we help people get the resources. Well, we're all first responders, so none of us are really smart enough to do anything. But except for Chris Scallon, he's a clinician now. But we help people find the resource. We vetted. We go to facilities to vet them. Clinicians vet them. We help people get the resources they need. When we finish speaking, every one of us, we give our personal cell phone number and our personal email. We will answer 24/7. I tell people I have a guy here in Oklahoma. He lives in a small town called Ada, where Blake Shelton's from. But I don't know him. I've never met him. I've never seen him. But he called me one time because he got my number from somebody that heard me speak. And about once every couple of months, I got him in my phone as Ada Bob. I know his name's Bob. And when he calls, we'll sit and visit for sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes an hour. That's all he needs. He's never asked me to, and sometimes he calls at a good time for me. It's not just a good time for him. It was a call I needed. And, but we're there. And I always tell people, I probably don't have the answer you're looking for, but I've been fortunate and blessed to come up with enough resources and networking that we will find somebody to get you the help you need. We talk Ada, Oklahoma, good people. Oh, I've seen that on the comments. I've heard guys speaking that, if I'm outside getting my ass kicked, physically beat up by somebody, I would hope all my brothers and sisters would come help me. Same
Right.
thing with the mental struggle. I'm
Yeah.
getting my ass kicked mentally. I would hope my brothers and sisters would be there for me. And so, like I say, Trauma Behind the Badge, that's what we do. We do our show every week, not every week, most weeks. Sometimes we're all traveling and we can't get together. It's a great time. Again, not family friendly, but it's a show people can find out they're not alone. They're not unicorns. And we always have good resources on there for people to reach out. And I'm thrilled. I'm the only firefighter in the bunch. They're all law enforcement. So I felt like they maybe felt like they had to throw a firefighter in there before I
So
reached
you
out.
are the unicorn.
Reached out and sued them for
Because you are the unicorn.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's
so, but that's man, I love being involved with it. Make a great bunch. Like I say, and they're just big old. They're badass. Every one of them, man. Their stories are crazy, but
some
they're
badasses.
they're badasses with big hearts. So
Yeah.
Most badasses that I've gotten to know have the biggest hearts.
that's true.
That's why I hang with you guys. That's why I surround myself with badasses, because your hearts were huge, and you all have seen darkness that so many people couldn't even imagine. However, you got through the darkness, and with getting through the darkness, and you're going to still have those triggers because you're human.
Right.
That you're saying, okay, this is what I don't want somebody else to go through what I went through.
Right.
That is the, we see the numbers increasing in completed suicides among first responders.
Yeah.
And that's our message, man. It's just, you do not have to wait until the wheels fall off to reach out. And, a lot of times when I get done speaking, I say that at the end. I bet people think, man, you could have said that. We could have been out here an hour and a half ago. Just say, just get to your point. But that's the whole point of what we, that everything you're feeling is normal. And real quick, I'll transition to Survive First, and then I know we'll talk about Lighthouse real quick. But I got to mention Survive First because, man, they are crazy good. Doug and his wife Karen. It's survivefirst.us. I think their little motto says, they want to take the no out of first responders, getting help. And they've been fortunate too, through all their networking. They have so many resources that usually what they're helping with, you can go to their website, you can apply. The process is really quick. They just need to vet stuff, but I'm fortunate to be a liaison kind of on their advisory deal. I think I don't even know what my role is, but I'm involved. And but they're, we pay for airfares to get guys to treatment, or so their family can fly with them to take them and drop them off, or co-pays on insurance, because insurance is still sometimes that's a detriment. First responders getting, a friend of mine called, and he was sending his son, who was a first responder, to alcohol treatment, which was, that's 45 days minimum, I believe, maybe probably 90. Mm-hmm. But when he left there, he was going to owe like $17,000 because of insurance. Like he said, well, if he wasn't drinking before, he'll be drinking now because he's got $17,000. Exactly. He can't. So, sometimes Survive First and Doug and Karen are able to help with, insurance co-payments or whatever. I believe I've heard that they, one lady's husband went away for 90 days. They were able to help with part of her mortgage for 3 months. So just whatever it takes to take the no out of a first responder getting help. So,
and you look at all these great nonprofits that are out helping people, that we need to get them out more so people can give more. To me, what's important is those people that are protecting me, whether it's first responders, whether it's the military, right. But the first responders are the first responders. That's why they're called the first responders. Right. And you all don't get paid crap. Your insurance isn't good. And however, when you go running into a fire, and as I was telling you before we went on, I once went out on a date, and the guy was my only fireman I ever dated. And my first date was, I got to see a house burn down in Jersey. And it's like, and when you're standing there watching a house burn down in real time, it's the reality of going, these people are going in there. They're like running in there.
Mhm.
And yet you don't, you got the smoke and everything, and coming back out, and the trauma of, as you said, bringing, dealing with finding bodies, and just the mental of, as what you mentioned is, once that job's done, you go back and you wait for the next call. You don't have time to even think about it. So to be able to get these resources out and be able to people, fundraise for them, to be able to help people. This is where the help needs to be done.
Right.
Amen.
And those who don't know me, which Kelly, that's one of the reasons she met me. I'm all about fundraising.
Yes, yes. Yes, that is how we met,
You
actually.
tell me no, you give me the reason why you're telling me no. Because the first responders are the people who are going to respond first.
Yep.
That's the reason. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I think,
Good soapbox.
yeah, I mean, that was great. I mean, and then that's what needs to be said. I think even just, getting ready for this, I knew the suicide rates were very high for first responders. It was gut wrenching to see how high they are compared to the general population. And then, of course, looking into what you're doing with Lighthouse Health and Wellness, helping those that help us is absolutely incredible. And I can't say enough about it, of you taking your pain and turning it into purpose, and
Right.
and just having the conversation for more, because people are hearing this that need to hear it. They're going to hear it after this that need to hear it. So you're just doing such incredible work, and for you to continue to be truly, in my opinion, a first responder, because those are the people that are struggling the most. I need a reason to want to wake up tomorrow, or
Right.
to help take off the weight that I'm carrying from all of the series of events that I have witnessed and a part of, and not talked about. So I just can't say enough of the incredible work that you're doing. And like I said, Lighthouse, I was just blown away by.
Yeah.
And we'll again share all of this information in the chat and comments afterwards, because I would love for people to know how that they can help any of your organizations, whether it's through their own organization or as individuals giving donations, time, what have you.
Right. Yeah. It's Lighthouse, and then I get always people ask me about this shirt too, where you can get. It's another organization called the 𝐷 Foundation. They work in mental health and to erase the stigma. And I don't have the link, but I'll get it and y'all can post it later. But there's a link where you can order these shirts. They're yeah, they start conversations sometimes. I don't wear them all the time, but if I wear one through the airport going somewhere, somebody will come up and I may visit with them, And another gentleman posted something about, I think it just says LinkedIn user to have a name. He talked about reaching out, and his son probably has PTSD from 2 tours.
Yes. So, and I know.
Well, I was just going to tell him
It's Michelle. So
everybody except for I think me and Doug, everybody on Trauma Behind the Badge is prior military. Chris
Perfect.
Scallon, one of the guys, Trauma Behind the Badge, he works for a facility and he deals mainly with veterans. I mean, he is the veteran go-to guy. So to that person on there, yeah, definitely reach out.
So she's coming from my Facebook. So Michelle, I'll connect you with all those people off of Facebook or off of our LinkedIn. But yeah, that's Michelle, because she's they're up in the Boston area, the Massachusetts area, and she's got and her son from his 2 tours. So it's all about connecting.
Yeah,
because it goes back to a lot of people don't know how to ask or who to ask.
Yeah, you're right. And I'll real quick, because I know we're pushing time, or overtime, but Lighthouse, real quick about the Lighthouse Health and Wellness app. It is, I think it's www.lighthousehw.org.
Yeah.
But it's an app that first responder, like Oklahoma City Fire and Police, Tulsa, they've got Atlanta just signed on with them. It's a phone app, and there's different options. There's a free app. There's a $2 per employee app, which is nothing. $4. Right. But you custom build these apps for your own fire or police department. You can design how you want it to look. You design how you want it to, what the features are on it. I can speak to Oklahoma City Fires. I know it lists all the peer support team members. So if you want to contact some, it's all anonymous. The only tracking there is there's self-assessments on there. I say tracking, but there's self-assessments for depression, anxiety, alcohol, all these different things. All it will tell, they could give a report and say, hey, y'all had 60 hits on depression assessment, or 75 hits on alcohol. So no names, no nothing, totally anonymous, but it gives them a direction, gives them some kind of,
it gives them a notice that there's something going on.
Right. But it lists all the peer support members. It lists all the therapists that the peer support team has vetted. It gives when you click on the therapist, it gives their address, the insurance they take, the different modalities they use. It's got workout articles, healthy recipe articles, articles about sleep deprivation. It's just and you can custom build it however you want it. And you can send out pushes on that thing to your personnel, so it's a great app. Joe Ramirez, the kind of founder of it, not kind of the founder of it, he is the founder of it. But it is, there's, and I'll say this, I do, and I'm kind of an ambassador and do stuff for Lighthouse. If you look at Lighthouse and go, man, ain't for us, man, there's get something for your employees. Give them, most first responders, I don't want you to help me. Give me the tools to help myself.
Yeah.
That is what most first responders. Culturally competent clinicians, number one, and they'll give you the tools to help yourself. That's what most first responders want. Don't help me. Tell me give me the tools to help myself.
Right. So it's Lighthouse Health and Wellness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Yes.
Michelle, it's Lighthouse Health and Wellness. I can send you over the link, but we're going to have the link on this.
Yeah, they're on LinkedIn too. Lighthouse Health and Wellness.
Connect with Chris.
Yeah.
Chris is going. Chris, if Chris sees this here a connection of mine or Kelly's, they'll accept you. And everything's on his LinkedIn as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Reach out. Don't like I say, don't.
Yes.
We give out our cell phones and our emails and all that for a reason. So that's what we do. It's I'm retired from the fire service. I heard a guy say, and I've just kind of reinvented my purpose. I still, I still get to stay involved and be around first responders, but I just kind of, reinvented my purpose. So,
well, because you had to go through this journey to be where you are today.
Yeah. And I figured I went through it for a reason, and the reason wasn't to keep it to myself and, so.
Yeah. And I just kind of want to say that, you earlier were saying you use other people's quotes all the time, and I'm going to misquote you, but one of the quotes that you had that definitely touched me so much was about, being a first responder, the job is considered, your heroes. And yes, you are. But the bigger hero that we can be is to ourselves and reaching out. And so I think that is so important. And in another part, I think in that same paragraph that I was reading was when you said, when I reached out for help, you were astounded by how many hands were reaching back.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the scary part, right? Is I'm afraid to be judged for reaching out, but then feeling the embrace and being able to exhale after you've done it. And I'm sure everybody's like, man, why didn't I do that sooner? Because it wasn't as scary as I thought. But I mean, such a blessing and a gift. And you do have some really good quotes yourself.
Right. Okay. Well, I say be a hero to yourself and your family, because you can't take care of your family like you want. You can't be the protector of your family if you're not taking care of yourself.
That's right.
And until you get to that point, and another guy I speak with, he always tells us people, he says, until you get to the point to where you can never truly live and be happy and do what you want to do until you don't give a shit what anybody else thinks. That doesn't mean you go around just purposely offending people. You get his point. It just means until you quit, that was me. Until I quit worrying about, I got to a point to where, you know what? I don't care. Matter of fact, when I got back from treatment, I sat the guys and girls at the fire station down at breakfast one morning. I just told them where I'd been, what I'd done, what I'd been through. And I think that kind of helped us be a little kind of more, be able to talk more around the fire station.
Well, two things, because I have a message for you to Chris, but going back to where we get to the point that we don't care about what people think, that's when we realize that we really want to love ourselves.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that we are good people, though we have faults. We're broken, because we're all broken some way or the other. We're all broken.
No doubt.
Melody said, please put the links in the comments. I do a Tuesday Veterans and First Responders Spotlight, and I would love to spotlight you, Chris, and I will put this link in the comments of the post. Thank you for your service and all you do. Well, Melody, connect with Chris and send him a message. I'm sure he would love to be involved.
Yeah,
definitely.
So how else can we help you? And of course, we're gonna do repeats, because we have had some awesome people come on here.
Yeah.
Right.
And for the fact that it's this is an awesome journey, and our journey hasn't stopped.
Well,
so to understand
what y'all are doing helps everybody, giving everybody. I mean, number one, the name of the podcast is awesome, and but
that's Kelly's doing.
you not everybody, and I'm blessed to have the platform I have. I do not take it for granted. Not everybody has that platform. The fact y'all are giving people an opportunity to tell their story. I always tell that, if you've got a story, tell it. You don't know who it's going to help.
Right.
I always tell that to the peer support team members that we speak to, because if I'm a 21-year-old new kid or 18 years old and I see somebody on the peer support team, I usually think they must have their shit together. No, they're probably there because they've been through what I've been through or what other people have been through. So I always tell people, I don't care how big audience, how long it takes. If you got a story to tell it. That's kind of my thing.
And none of us have our shit together.
No. And everybody's got a story.
Because we're still trying to figure it out.
Right.
And we trip, we fall, and sometimes we fly out of an airplane.
When me and Cheryl were going through a lot of our stuff and being separated, some of the comments I would hear from people that I knew what was going on in their backyard more than they did. And I'm thinking, but I used to think, I just throw them under the bus. I think, no, that's not that. Just let them, because like I say, everybody's got something. I don't care if you don't, God bless you. If you got the perfect life, power to you. But
you don't. You're in denial of something.
Also, to learn that everybody's going to have a flippant opinion on how you should live your life.
Right.
Because they're looking in their mirror and they're not really liking what so they're going to tell you what to do. So just like Cheryl had friends going, don't bring them back, and you had your guy friends going, don't bother with her.
Yep.
It's your journey, and you're going to trip and fall, but it's about you.
Right.
And those who will support you, they're going to come out and you're going to be like, wow, I didn't even think that they supported me. Right. Because they're going to see the strength that you go through. And having these what you do with the first responders and allowing them to be, speak their truth, even as jagged as and ugly as it is,
right.
to feel safe. Yeah. I mean,
well,
that's awesome.
Oh, definitely. And, one final message I always put out, I say, we got to take, at the end of the day, I always show pictures of my family when I'm talking. Because I don't show this to say this is my family. I show this to y'all to say this is who's going to be there at the end of the day when it's all said and done. And I say that, but we were fortunate our marriage saved and it's worked out. I'm not a marriage counselor, and Cheryl will tell you there was a lot of times when our marriage working out and being like it is now is a bonus, to where she wanted me healthy so I could be present for my sons and be a good father. So. I'm not saying everything's going to be hunky-dory and your marriage is going to work out. It's going to be great. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, your family, and that's who's going to be there. Because I did 31 years and 7 months with the Oklahoma City Fire Department. I retired on March 1st of 2017. On March 2nd, they promoted somebody and put them in my seat, and the Oklahoma City Fire Department has not missed a beat. Yep. And that's not a bad thing. That's just the nature of the beast. That's just life. And, no police, no law enforcement, no fire, no hospital, is going to shut down because you step away or you retire or whatever. So it's important to remember that,
Always
I know it's,
replaceable.
people say, I always say it's not who we are. Well, it is. It's an identity, but deep down, it's what we do. It's not who we are. So I just tell people, you got to remember, at the end of the day, it's your family, and those same friends that I told them to F off and get out of my face were the same ones that were, waiting for me when I reached out.
And those are the people that are supposed to be in your life, and unfortunately, some won't. I mean,
Yeah.
Kelly and I understand that when you go through some hard stuff. So we have a comment. Ashif is always so philosophical. He goes, somehow we too often think people will judge us. Well, people will always judge us, but we have to learn to just like, okay, you judge me, why you judge yourself?
Yeah.
Because I don't really care.
What you're doing.
I love what I heard today. It gives us the courage to speak up and tell our stories. Well, we all have a story, and nobody should be ashamed of our story. You shouldn't be ashamed of your story, because your story, as much as it might have so much darkness in it, you do not know how much it could help somebody else, and understand that they're not alone.
Another meme I've seen, a quote says, "Your darkness may be somebody else's light."
Absolutely.
I wish I was smart enough to come up with that stuff my own.
I mean, it is so true, and in so many different ways. But what's fascinating too is the people closest to you, Chris, that loved you the most, that you pushed the hardest away, of course, because you didn't want them to see the pain that you were in, because you couldn't even see the pain you were in. They never left. And I've always said that people that act out the most harsh are the ones that are usually wounded the deepest.
Right.
And then conversely from that, because Christy and I, and I'll speak for you a little bit here, sister, is people think because we're upbeat, positive people that we can't possibly suffer depression. And I've suffered depression. And when I reached out to people, were like, "Oh, Kelly, because I'm the go-to for the speaking to," and I'm like, no, I'm actually feeling like shit, and I need someone to talk to. And which I can say, I'm so blessed. Christy is one of those people for me that I can be like, "Sister, I am struggling. I don't know what I need to do, but I'm in a funk." Find your person, find your tribe, find whatever it is. I encourage anyone who is listening, if you know someone or you are someone, reach out. We'll share every resource that we possibly can, because this is a conversation that needs to continue on the regular and become the norm. It shouldn't be like, there should be no stigma attached.
Right.
And, to all of our first responders, Christy and I can't speak highly enough for any of them, for what they do, because, man, I've been in a situation where I needed it. And I'm blessed by the grace of God that they were there. So many amazing takeaways today. And I'm with you, Christy. We've absolutely got to have you back, Chris, because there's so much more even to talk about. And I love, too, that we're highlighting the fact of, for all of us, Chris is not identified by one singular event. And like you said, that event does give you a platform, but it is not your identity of who you are and who you've become. And the courage and the strength, the bravery that it has taken for you to trudge through that trauma and come out the other side and know that it's an ongoing job. Like, I'm not finished just because I finished treatment or because I'm back home. I need to continue to take care of myself every single day and allow myself grace when I have those days where, man, I'm feeling like shit and I don't know why I'm triggered or what is happening. That's okay, because it doesn't go away. You just learn how to deal with it and how to move on and let go of those bags that we choose to carry, of all those burdens along the way. So I guess, I know we could talk forever.
I know. I actually have a 2:30, so we can't. But I want to just say, understand that, my hashtag is many, but it's mental health advocate. I'm huge on about the mental health because I spent my whole life nobody ever talking about it. So I spiraled down a lot. And because of that, it helped me for where I am, sort of like where, Chris and Kelly, it built me up with my confidence coaching. And understanding that Kelly, myself, and I know, Chris, shoot us a message. If you connect with Chris and, with Kelly and I, we're here for you. it's called active listening, but also we have empathy. I mean,
Amen.
we know struggles, but we might not know your struggle, but we might know a resource to help you be able to open up what's closing you so much. So again, as always, we've got a great guest. Excited. And Chris, again, how can we help you besides me blowing up Facebook and everything else for fundraising?
I think what y'all are doing, man, helps helps everybody. You're like I say, your podcast and the guest you have on, giving somebody an outlet for their story. Like I say, yeah, and just blow it up on LinkedIn, and we'll and we'll just. I know, we know some of the same people in the same, genre, I guess would say. So, I just know I need your number. I keep you as a contact, and same thing. If somebody reaches out to y'all and you've tried other, reach out to me and vice versa. I may be reaching out to y'all for a connection or a contact. And like I say, it's what's going to take. I'm not so naive to think one of these days we're going to take the red line out of stigma. I think it'll constantly be a battle, but we can sure enough, at least decrease it some to where people are willing to reach out and see those numbers fall, the completed suicides and the broken families and the ended careers and all that kind of stuff.
Amen. So all of that being said, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, privilege, honor, blessing, Chris, to have you with us. And everyone, we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 1:11 p.m. Eastern Time for the awesome journey, because we are all in this together, and together we do make it awesome.
All right.
Have a great day.
All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you.